Over about a month, a handful of people worth listening to each sat down to explain what an AI harness is. Not hype accounts, people who build these kinds of systems for a living, one way or another, and one of the big cloud platforms. And they don't fully agree with each other. One will tell you the harness is everything after the model, and that whatever interface you're looking at is specifically not part of it. Another says the harness is the whole experience, interface included, and then builds a custom one as part of the harness. Same word, same month, two answers that don't line up. Hey, Scott's avatar here. The real Scott writes these. I just get to break them down and cut through the hype. And when the term harness started turning up all over my feed, my eye did the thing. So I went and watched them. Then I went and read the write-ups from the labs and the engineering blogs behind the tools you already use. And I did not expect what I found. As far as I can tell, they're each right. I didn't catch anybody making it up to sell you something. That's a stranger problem than hype, and a more annoying one. When somebody's wrong, you correct them. When a room full of careful people are each mostly right, and each describing something a little different, you're the one who has to work out where they're all standing. So that's the job today, not who wins. There's a core to this that they all agree on, and an edge where they genuinely split, for real reasons. Once you can see which is which, the next harness take you scroll past gets a lot easier to place. Let's clear it up. Let's start with the model by itself, because that part gets skipped a lot. You send it a prompt, you get text back. That's the whole thing. It can't open a file, run a test, remember you from yesterday, or check whether what it just told you was true. It's a very good text engine sitting in a box. So here's the cleanest definition of an agent I've come across, from Simon Willison. An agent is a model with tools, running in a loop to accomplish a goal. Now count the parts in that sentence. Tools, a loop, and a goal, which means something has to decide when it actually got there. Only one of those is the model. The rest is stuff somebody built and wrapped around it. That wrapper is the harness. Model plus harness equals agent. And that same little equation keeps showing up. A cloud platform's explainer, Martin Fowler's engineering write-up, a solo creator's walkthrough, a research post about agents rewriting their own scaffolding. Nobody coordinated that. So when people who define a word differently keep landing on the same formula, there's probably something real underneath it. They agree on what's inside it too, at least at the center. Three pieces: tools, so it can reach outside the box; read a file, run a command, hit an API, search the web; a loop, so it goes more than once; do something, look at what came back, go again; and a check that decides when it's finished; a test that passes, a rule that clears, a human who approves. If you saw the video I did on writing loops, this is the rung underneath it. A prompt is one instruction. An agent is a model looping on its own. A loop is the system you build to run that agent. The harness is what that system is made out of. That's the settled part. Nobody's fighting about any of it. They start splitting at the edges. And it mostly comes down to one question. Where does the harness stop? Google Cloud draws it tight. The harness is everything after the model. The tools, the loop, and the code that decides whether the job is done. And they make a point of this part. Whatever interface you're looking at is not the harness. That's why the same harness can run behind a terminal, a chat window, or a web app without anything underneath it changing. In plenty of cases, there's no front end at all. Claire Vaux answers that same question another way. She founded Chat PRD, she's run product and engineering at places like LaunchDarkly and Optimizely, and she built a harness live on camera for triaging bugs in an episode of her show, How I AI. Her line is that the harness is the whole experience, including the human experience. So she built herself a custom interface and counts it as part of the harness. Both of those are defensible, depending on what you're doing. If you're building the engine, keeping the interface out of it is clean, and you get to reuse the engine. If you're shipping something a person sits in front of every day, the interface is doing part of the work, and calling it separate is splitting hairs. There's a second place they diverge. One creator lays this out as 3 eras in time: prompt engineering, then context engineering, then harness engineering, each one taking over from the last. It's a useful story, but I don't think the era part holds up. The major AI labs describe it as a different question, not the next step on a timeline. Context engineering asks what the model should see. Harness engineering asks what the system should prevent, measure, and correct. Those two run at the same time. It's nested, not a relay race. And then the loosest version I've come across, usually from smaller channels covering AI more generally. These folks know their way around the tools. The walkthrough shows you a folder of markdown files, instructions, skills, commands, and calls that the harness. Under a very wide definition, that's fair. That is the instruction layer. But if it's the only version you ever see, you'd walk away picturing a harness as a few files, and miss the loop, the tool execution, the permissions, and the thing that decides when to stop. Nobody here is lying to you. They're standing at different altitudes, and hardly any of them say which one. Now, here's the part that got me. Once I lined all of these up next to each other, everybody reaches for the word harness like it means more power. Bolt this on and your model can finally go do things. So go back and look at what these people actually built. Claire's bug triage harness has a mode that will investigate an issue and explain the root cause, and structurally cannot write a single line of code. And she deliberately made her data connector worse than the general purpose one, so the agent pulls a few specific things instead of wandering around in there. Anthropic has a write-up on long-running agents, and it's mostly rules about what the agent isn't allowed to do. Don't try to build the whole app at once. Don't mark a feature finished without testing it. Don't delete a test that's failing. One engineer's advice is almost entirely based on caps, around 10 tools, not 30, an instruction file under 60 lines, and no new rule unless something actually went wrong to earn it. Martin Fowler's version is a set of checks whose whole job is to reject work. And that smaller channel version, the folder of markdown files, the sharpest thing in it was a reviewer agent that caught unsourced claims and sent the work back to get fixed. Those are all restrictions. And look at the word itself, a harness on a horse, a climbing harness, the harness in a car seat. Not one of those makes anything more powerful. They exist to keep something from going where it shouldn't. So that's the reframe I'd hand you. A harness isn't the thing that lets your model do more. It's the thing that stops it from doing everything. Because a model that can do anything is a model you can't predict. And you can't ship what you can't predict. Fence off what it's allowed to touch, and that same model turns into something that does one job the same way every time. So when somebody tells you what a harness is, start from the assumption they're right, and then work out which layer they're standing on. Are they talking about a folder of instruction files? The tools in the loop? The checks that reject bad work? The whole product a person sits down in front of? Those are all real answers. They're answers to different questions. And once you can hear which question somebody's answering, the disagreement stops being confusing and starts being useful. And if you're the one building it, the question flips around. It isn't what can I let this thing do? It's what should it not be able to do? What doesn't it get to touch? How does it know when it's finished? And what has to be true before the work counts as done? Here's an example of something I built. Every time I push code, a security review fires before anything reaches the remote. It decides what gets looked at, and it runs that past more than one model, from more than one company. None of them get to change a single line. They only report. Every finding gets written to a database and shows up on a dashboard, and nothing moves forward until I've worked that queue myself. Every piece of that is a limit. That's a harness. None of this makes the models smarter. They're the same models either way. What changes is how much room you gave them and how carefully you defined what done means. And that's the whole point of this channel. It's almost never a meaningless buzzword, and it's almost never one true definition that somebody's gatekeeping. It's gray, full context, so you can make the call yourself. If that's your speed, hit subscribe. And real life Scott, he's already writing the next one. I'll see you soon.